Welcome everybody to a new episode of Abstract Apes, and today's a special episode because we have two guests on our podcast, and they are Peter and Nikolay from Before the Valley. Peter, Nikolay, how are you doing?
Yeah, hello.
Hey, yeah, pretty good, man. Pretty good. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're great. So just to give you a bit of an introduction, they are two of our friends who are really like entrepreneur focused. Their whole channel is about business, how to grow, how to get all these opportunities, and we'll hear more from them just a couple of moments. So the idea behind this podcast is for us to challenge them with some questions that they haven't seen, and just to put them on the spot. And the topic that we've chosen here is, facing the unknown, seeking discomfort. This is what the orientation is going to be. And without further ado, Penef, would you like to put our guests on the spot here?
Right. Well, before I ask any questions, I just want to ask them to say a couple of words about their channel, what they do, and like what their experience is so far. Because I know they're just as new as us in this.
Yeah, sure. Should I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so well, we decided to start our channel was basically to kind of record our entrepreneurial journey, and that was the main reason. So we are about 15 episodes in now, and we try to capture all of our experiences, what we learned throughout the way. The idea is if we are able to provide value on a mass scale in the future, we would have some kind of a record of how we did it. We just thought it's something new because usually when you have, let's call them successful people, you don't have a clear picture of how they did it. You just hear these random stories. But I think having a podcast and just putting your thoughts out there is a good way to record this. So that's our goal with the podcast, and also to improve our communication skills, which I think we are slowly but surely getting there. We just briefly about our podcast, we talk about different business topics. We get philosophical from time to time for your audience specifically if they're interested. And that's what Before the Valley is. If Nikolay wants to add anything to this.
Not much. I think you summarized it pretty well. And that's where like the name comes from. Before the Valley is before the Silicon Valley. It's like this moment of the period, like of the life of entrepreneur before being successful. And if we manage to become successful, people would know what we were doing and might apply some of the stuff to their lives. So
yeah, and just to add, if we don't become successful, you would know what doesn't work. So it's still just
Perfect.
Yeah. I love the idea behind documenting that journey so that you can look back years from now. And this is partly why we started it as well, just to hear our ideas now and see how we progress from there. So I think that's a great idea for sure. And good luck to you guys in the future. I'm really looking forward to see you, progress where you go. I know you have plenty of ideas that you're working on. So that's amazing and inspiring as well.
Okay, so without any further ado, I have my first question.
Let's go.
So you guys are business people, obviously, so you probably know what stock trading is and currency trading and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So I want to ask you, why is risking in business so appealing to people?
Should I? Yeah, let me start. Well, I think there you have risk-averse people, and you have people that I would say are more risky. I think that has to do with how you're biologically predisposed a bit. I think, some people have well, it's almost like, when with betting, some people are very prone to getting addicted to betting just because I think they're wired up this way. And some people love risk, and that's why I wouldn't say it's only the stock exchange. I would say even like starting a startup, it's a very risky endeavor. I think there was a research that was explaining, so if you work in a corporate job where you have much more security, and if you work, let's say, in a startup, if you take the probabilities of succeeding with a startup and just going up in the corporate ladder, and you take these probabilities, you would find out that the expected value of each of these endeavors, it's almost the same. But you still have people that work in startups and people that work in corporate jobs and prefer going up the corporate ladder. So I think even there was like the estimation was that the corporate job brings you more value, but you still have people that work on startups, obviously. So I think it depends on what kind of a person you are, and this is, I think, heavily determined by environment, but also biological factors, and what makes you happy as well. Because, for example, I'm more chaotic, I would say. So I think I'll do better in a startup environment rather than a corporate job. That's why I'm trying to build a startup as well. These are my thoughts. What do you think, Nikolay?
Well, the thing is that recently I listened to the podcast which you shared with me of Tim Ferriss with Richard Koch. I don't know if this is how you pronounce his name, who is the author of the 80-20 principle. Mm-hmm. And he has a new book in which he analyzed 20 or 30 people who are very, very successful, like Lenin, Margaret Thatcher, Jeff Bezos, and like all of these high achievers, like very, very high achievers who made some difference in this world. And he said that risk taking is not one of the attributes which they had, which led to their success. Like it was not a trend. And out of the 20 people or more that he analyzed, it was around 9 who were risk takers. So his conclusion was that risk taking is not something which is gonna define whether you're gonna be successful or no. And this to some extent answers your question that you asked, why is risk-taking something that people find appealing? Well, I would say that when you have more risk, you have to expect more return, which is kind of like how economics work. So when people go and try to do something risky, they're like, oh, I'm doing this because I'm expected to get more in return compared to doing something which is in my comfort zone, as you might describe it as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about.
And
basically, go on.
My question. So we didn't know. Me and Penny didn't know what questions we're asking, and my question fits really neatly as a follow-up to yours. That's strange, because we recently did an episode on Jordan Peterson's personality traits. From there, I figured that I'm actually a neurotic person. I'm high in neuroticism, and I wanted to ask you, so how do you deal with uncertainty as a neurotic person? There's this trend in entrepreneurship where there's not much certainty, and neurotic people tend to experience more anxiety per unit of uncertainty. Right? So this daily struggle of just ups and downs and not knowing what's going to happen and having problems all the time. What do you think is the best strategy to deal with that uncertainty?
Yeah, sure. So like something interesting is that yesterday I had a conversation with a person who is in the venture capital industry, and I asked him, why does it seem that it's always chaotic? Is there a point when things become more stable? And he said, no, like if in a startup, it's always chaotic. In a big corporation, it's always chaotic. So I think that the way to deal with this is just to accept that it's going to be chaotic, and you have to be present so that you really see what you need to do now and not to end up overthinking stuff because they're chaotic. Because this is just how things are going to be. Things change. You're in an environment which is dependent on so many elements, to say it this way. So you have to accept this fact, and that's my view on dealing with it.
I think especially because I'm very high on neuroticism as well. So how I try to tackle this, just adding up from personal experience, I guess, to what you just said, Nikolay. I think how I try to do it is when I experience negative emotion, I just know it's amplified just because I'm very neurotic. So this kind of chews me, I guess, just because I know it's not as bad as I think it is, and kind of helps me get over it much faster. And I think what helped me a lot is finding out I'm very high on neuroticism, just because before that I didn't know. But once you find out you're high on neuroticism compared to everyone else, that means that everything you experience is much higher. You experience it much worse than everyone else, and that kind of helps you to see it objectively. And once you see it objectively, I guess, well, yeah, you can. It's much easier to get through. So I think it's just this awareness of when you're feeling bad, just realizing, oh, it's actually not that bad. Which is, I guess, it's not the best solution, but it helps me to think of it this way.
No,
I guess
absolutely.
self-awareness
Yeah, I
is
think
what
I have
helps.
a similar experience to that, and that's great to hear from someone else. That just because I experience those emotions more highly than the rest of the people makes me feel less anxious about it. It's like an instant cure, and makes me look at it more objectively, which also sets the tone to be more neutral.
Yeah, I think feedback is crucial in this sense, and just like doing the analysis, doing the research, and not the research, but the how would you call that? A survey, the Jordan Peterson test. Just doing it as like a feedback from, I guess, everyone else, because you don't know how other people perceive the world, but this gives you some kind of a perspective and what's actually bad, depending on everyone else and depending on from your point of view. So comparing your point of view to everyone else's point of view kind of shifts you towards the middle, can help you shift toward the middle. Yeah.
So I have a question for the guys with high neuroticism. I'm not completely sure if Nikolay is, but I'm kind of like neutral on neuroticism, and I'm thinking, how much does overthinking play into this high neuroticism? Because I've caught myself kind of overthinking stuff, and that's really what makes it worse. And it's not really like the situation itself, it's me overthinking it way too many times and making it worse in my brain. Have you guys had that?
Well, that I think that definitely hurts, but in my experience, it hasn't been the only thing that amplifies this. I would say it's just the chaos that you expect that makes you anxious, let's say. So, for example, I used to have I wouldn't call it a fear, but I would feel very anxious when speaking in front of more than, let's say, 4 people. So I don't think it was overthinking. It was more of the chaos and all the inputs that I have to manage in my head, and the chaos and the unexpected result that made me feel anxious. And I didn't think too much about it. I was just like, okay, let's go and do it. So I wouldn't say it was overthinking. It's just, I think I am wired in this way to kind of, if I don't know the outcome of something, I might try to but I'm also, I don't think I'm too risk averse, so I'm not sure about that.
I think
yeah,
what you are
just,
is an adrenaline junkie, Peter.
Yeah, it's like I feel bad and I like it. That's how I'm wired. Yeah, but yeah, that's my experience. I don't think it's just overthinking. It's just the chaos of the whole situation, I would say. I don't know about you guys.
Danny, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I the reason why I said adrenaline junkie is because I feel the same way. I remember being really like nervous and shy when I was younger, but there was this age where I started doing more and more stuff. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna like open up to these experiences, go on roller coasters, you know, and do all of these adrenaline activities, and you just learn to like it. I guess it's a minor form of masochism, but it helps you to face those challenges. Even though you feel anxious, you feel like, oh, I'm gonna jump that cliff, and we've been cliff jumping with Penev this summer, and that's the framing that I put around it. It's just, this is actually more about excitement than it is about anxiety. So I'm gonna do it because it's fun, and that mental note in my head, this is not anxiety, this is excitement. It really helps me to frame the whole event in a positive way.
Did you
Exactly
know that?
my experience, by the way. I
Yeah.
think you put it well.
Excitement
When
and
you said
anxiety.
this example, when you gave it, I remember there was a very trendy quote, I think, or a story from Will Smith, which was about him overthinking stuff, or like thinking, oh, what's gonna happen when I jump from the plane with a parachute. Do you remember it, guys? It was very, very trending.
Or was it where they
don't
filmed an
remember.
episode with Yes Theory
Seek
about
discomfort? Yeah, yes,
heli
Theory.
bungee, where they jumped off a helicopter?
I'm not 100% sure, but like my point was that he was just describing that before jumping from this plane with a parachute, he was like, oh, am I gonna do it? Am I gonna be like pulling the thing at the right point of time? And then after jumping, he was like, I forgot about all these thoughts and I just focus on what I have to do. So like all of these stuff before the jump are irrelevant completely and they're useless. So I would say that thinking about it and discuss it now, you just have to care a bit less before doing something which you're scared of.
Yeah.
I mean, because at some point those thoughts become just useless. They don't help you in any way, because sometimes they can help you because you might realize something that you weren't thinking about before that. But this links to Penev's point of overthinking. I think overthinking is also something that plays a role.
Yeah, definitely magnifies it, I think. But it's not the only, I guess, requirement for feeling anxious, yeah.
I think you can train dealing with fear. I definitely think so, because I've now, well, kind of lost my fear towards heights in like on cliff jumps or anything like that. I don't feel anything when before I did. I definitely think even like free running people, parkour people that stand on top of like high buildings, I definitely think there are ways to cope with fear. But what I was trying to say earlier is I think the emotion of anxiety and the emotion of excitement is the same thing, like in your brain, like biologically speaking, but it's just like the context that really defines what it is. So yeah, I definitely think, Danny, as you said, anxiety can turn into excitement. It's just the way you see it. And if you guys have any experiences in this, please share. Okay.
Well, like when you said fear, I think that's something which might be useful for people, is that fear is something that you can deal with, as you said. And one of the ways is to experience. The other one is like the fear setting exercise.
Yeah.
Like that's something, if you visualize what is the worst that can happen from an outcome, and you then realize, okay, that's not as bad as I thought that it might come to be, you're like braver to do stuff, and you go to face your fears.
Yeah. It just thinking on the consequences. I found this to help me with anxious situations as well, like public speaking. Like if I mess up, nothing. Like the only result from this is people not getting the point from my presentation or whatever. It's it's very helpful. I think even like writing it down, I think helps.
Yeah, it's like one of those pages on Instagram, Visualize. Mm-hmm. What was it called?
Visualize Value. Yeah.
Visualize Value. It's like a very, very cool page. So like they had this thing. What you think people think of you when you mess up, let's say, it's like this big bubble. What people actually think of you when you mess up, it's like a very, very small.
Yeah, you're not that important.
No one gives a fuck, man.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. Like, nobody cares about you as much as you think that they do. Like, they don't give a damn about your failure if it doesn't affect them directly.
Exactly.
And especially in a presentation, okay, they might not get the point, but that's not that essential for them. So come on, keep moving to the next point. Don't mess your whole presentation if you do something bad during it.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to shift the mood a bit and ask you about another trait, which is conscientiousness, because it plays a major role in entrepreneurship as well. So what is your advice for people that are less conscientious but still have high ambitions? So we know from research that there's a strong genetic component when it comes to the trait conscientiousness, how hardworking someone is. But all of us have goals and all of us want to go places, and conscientiousness is something that's really important when it comes to achieving your goals. So how do you boost your motivation? Maybe you can talk about your strategies to boost your motivation on a day-to-day basis in order to stay focused and just keep pushing.
Can I just say something? When Danny is speaking about all of this stuff, I feel that Peter is speaking, because you two seem to be like influenced by the same people. Jordan Peterson is just an example of that. But consciousness and all this kind of stuff are things that Peter would mention. So what's going on here?
Yeah, we recently had a chat with Penev and Danny when I was at their place. So we talked about all of this. And their last episode was on Jordan Peterson's analysis. So I think
that's where it's coming from.
That's the reason for finding trends.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to say firstly that conscientiousness is probably one of the traits that's most, how would you call it, mendable, flexible. So you can kind of improve on it a lot. And I think the first thing I would say is, if you're low on conscientiousness, just play to your strengths, man. Like, if you're low on conscientiousness but you're high on openness to new experience, just do art or become a musician or start a startup. Like the most successful startups, the correlation between success in entrepreneurship and conscientiousness is much lower than people would expect. It's much the correlation is much higher with openness to new experience, which is it could be openness to ideas or openness to aesthetics. So that would be what I would say. Just play to your strengths, and if you're open to new experiences, just go with that. If you're high on extroversion, let's say, you might go for something completely different that wouldn't require that much effort, but would require you being able to deal with a lot of people, let's say, because you would just feel happier with this, and you wouldn't feel it as work. So that's the first thing I would say. Just like play to your strengths. Don't try to, because you can't shift it. I think like you can't completely turn it around. Maybe you can, but it's much more difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be the first thing I would say. And then in terms of motivation and how to improve it, there's a lot of tactics, I would say. The first thing I would say is just have a clearly defined goal of something that you want to do a lot. And if you don't know what you want to do a lot or want to achieve a lot, try a lot of different things. I don't think that's trying a lot of different things is necessarily correlated with conscientiousness. And I think you can do that even if you're low on conscientiousness. So if you don't know what to do, try a lot of things. You'll find something you love. And once you find something you love, define your clear goal, make a plan. It's going to take you a day maybe. And after that, there's a lot of little bits and tricks that you can try. But I think just visualizing what you have to do and finding what you want to do in life is where most of your motivation should come from to be consistent and successful in the long term.
Yeah, I love that. And like, I think that this is something that fits pretty well with our audience, and I assume yours, because it should be similar, that we should really strive to find the thing that makes us feel alive, to use this cliche, but to enjoy it, and to try different stuff is the key, because there is just this preconception that people should be already aware of what they want to do after graduating from secondary school, high school. And that's just, I would say, almost impossible, because you haven't seen anything. And afterwards, you just have to be trying and doing different stuff, jumping into, like, diving into different stuff. And then when something clicks, okay, I love that, let me focus on it. And that's how you eventually...
Yeah, that's also how you improve on conscientiousness, right? So the best thing to do is, if you want to learn to be disciplined while doing something you love, not something you hate, because it's much more difficult, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Put in more passion and less brute force, to put it simply.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes brute force is needed as well, because I don't know.
Yeah, but I think you can learn brute force while doing something you're passionate. For example, sports is a great example, because you're like, for example, me, I was always very passionate of doing sports. And sometimes, you would hate doing something, but it's just that, okay, I want to be a footballer, so that's why I'll do the extra sprint or whatever. It didn't turn out good, as you can see, being professional.
Yeah, you had your injury.
Well,
yeah, everyone has like one of those injuries that finishes the career.
It was the injuries, guys. I was this close to becoming pro, but then the injury. Yeah.
Yeah. About injuries, by the way, side note, like just a little bit of a tangent. There was a research done, and they found that hockey players that are born in the first quarter of the year are much more successful than the ones born in the last quarter of the year. And that's because when they're kids, they develop a lot more quickly. So what they do is they get special treatment because they're better than the other peers. And that's how it like becomes an exponential curve of care and stuff like that. Because like if you're on a pro team as a kid and you get seriously injured, they're not gonna let you just like be injured, But if you're on a shit team, well, you don't have any luck, man.
Well,
tough
that's
luck.
massive to hear.
I think this was a similar concept, if not the same, was from the book Outliers of Malcolm Gladwell, who described that people who are born in those countries that he researched in January, let's say, and become hockey players, they have more chance of becoming pro hockey players because they have more time to play. Like they are born in January, they start like playing the next year straight away, let's say. So they have like this small advantage, which exponentially leads to them jump into the pro team, as Benev said, and then they become much, much better.
Yeah, it's also something else. It's like, I remember when I was playing football as a child, the 1 year difference, it's so big. We would lose like 5 goals
It's
to
insane,
the year-old team and beat the young team with 5 goals. It's like massive. and you have January to December is 1 year. So people, I can see that. That's very interesting to hear.
Yes, and because I've also had injuries, and I'm born at the end of the year, so like I have an excuse, I didn't make it because I was born.
I was born at the end of the
Why did
year.
you make it pro? I was born in December. So that's like an interesting point to make, is that we should have sex in May or not June,
Yeah.
June and July.
Make our
Just to make
children
sure
genetic
children-
freaks.
That's where we should make babies, but that's not, I don't think that's relevant for our audience. Guys, don't rush that. Don't rush that.
Anyway,
No sex in Jan, guys.
let's shift.
It's February is Valentine's Day, so what the fuck? Whatever. Sorry.
Anyway, yeah. Let's digress. So, my next question is about the emotional response to risk taking and seeking discomfort and stuff like that. We briefly touched upon it a little bit, but we only talked about the preparation phase, of being anxious, being excited. I want to talk about the social aspect of it, and also the rewards you get out of it, how you feel after you fail, how you feel after you succeed, how that affects your social environment and stuff like that. And you can give any example, starting from simple cliff jumping, as Danny said, to startups and stuff like that, people that have made it as startup entrepreneurs and stuff like that. So please share your thoughts on this.
So your question is more of like,
What is your emotional response to seeking discomfort? Why is, going back to my first question, I think those people that are gamblers, that are bettors, are that Petter mentioned they're biologically predisposed to this. I think they're seeking that emotional response out of the act itself. Have you had anything like that happen to you, or how do you feel after being successful in a risk-taking situation, let's say?
So in my experience, I used to be very emotional with success and failure, so it would affect me in both ways. So if it's a success, even like now, I would like literally go wild, and like my flatmate hates me because I would like shout and stuff, even like watching football or whatever it is. But I think like stoicism helped me kind of control this, because if you have a massive response to success, you also have a massive response to failure. And failure is much more common than success, I would say. Despite it being I think it has a lower impact than success in terms of your progress, let's say, because you can fail 1,000 times, but if you succeed once, it's usually, big, especially in the stuff that we do, startups. So my point being that after, getting into stoicism, I try to reduce my reaction to both of these. I do have it, but I try to do stuff despite the results, of course taking into consideration in mind the results, but also not putting them as the only goal, but more of the intent and what am I doing, are my intentions right, should I be doing this in this situation, and then whatever comes out of the results, that's fine if it's good.
I think for me, I'm on the other
good.
side of the spectrum. So you said you had a very big response to success and to failure. For me, throughout my whole life, I've actually went like inside and didn't share. For example, if I'm happy about something, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be stoic. If I'm sad about something, I'm like, okay, I'm not sharing. And I've just started to learn the importance of that reward. So whenever there's some kind of success, you need to celebrate, because that reinforces the whole event. Now imagine if you always succeed and you never celebrate. Eventually what's going to happen is you're not going to be motivated by that success. Your reward circuit is not going to be wired in the right way. And that's why in business, I've seen this TED talk about this guy who used to be an addict. So he used to be an alcoholic and he took a lot of drugs. Now he's a very successful entrepreneur. And he says that his biggest downfall, his biggest, let's say, problem with his character is that he can't celebrate success, and that's why his whole team isn't lacks the motivation they need, is because of that component, which is you need to be able to wire yourself in such a way so as to value success.
Yeah, I like that. Like, I think that once again, the answer is to be moderate with both, because when you achieve something, even like those small wins that you do on a, like have on a daily basis, whatever it is, you have to celebrate them in some way. To say, nice, good job, man. On to the next one, or something which is gonna make you realize that you did something that you succeeded in. Well, on the other hand, all of those failures, you shouldn't see them as like the end point of the journey, but something that, if you accept them, that something should happen. Okay, it happened. This one, I'm going to learn from it. Now on to the next one once again. And this is how you continue. And like something that I find quite hilarious was, once again, Tim Ferriss, that one of his girlfriends, like ex-girlfriends, not that he has like many
Encircle tiger.
yeah, like one of his ex-girlfriends, because she saw that he's very harsh on himself when it comes to those small wins on a daily basis, she told him, man, make a jar which you're gonna call the awesome jar, and every single time you achieve something that you obviously are a winner out of the situation, put a note and put it in the jar. And when you feel down, when things don't go well, open that jar and read some of those stuff, and you're gonna be okay, I did this, I did that. So for example, in our case with the startup, yesterday we went to like our plan was to make user tests. And first we wanted to get more people to a restaurant by giving them flyers and telling them, oh, do you want to go to this place, here it is, it's very cool. And we expected to have a flow of people going to the place, or like not a flow but at least some people. Completely unsuccessful, nobody went. And then we went into the restaurant and we did another test, and the test was successful because we got very good data on the application. And if you see both stuff and you kind of accept them as something that should be happening and should move on, I think the key is to be moderate, not to go to the how do you say it, like to be
Polarizing.
yeah.
Well, to be too excited about
Yeah, like let's say,
successes in
because you might get lost as well from if you are too excited from the small successes, from like those small wins. Because if you do something and like, man, I'm the best, I'm like the best guy that can ever do something, I'm like a genius, and then you fail miserably, you're like,
Then
shit,
the next
I'm
moment you're
depressed.
crashing down.
Yeah, that's really polarizing. That's what Peter was saying. When you feel wins and losses really hard, it's very polarizing. Huge emotional response to everything.
and that's also tiring, I think.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
One more thing I wanted to mention is, because I feel like I can't be too big on like small wins. But I was thinking now, because you said polarizing, I'm thinking, why because I don't care about like failures that much. I feel like, especially like day-to-day failures. I think I see them as, I try to see them as data. I had one of the heads in my corporate job recently saying that when we lose money, because we run campaigns, marketing campaigns, digital marketing campaigns, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So she was saying, when we lose money, we're actually buying data. So if you kind of wire yourself to see failures in the same way, it's like, okay, I failed, but I learned something. Then it's much easier to have a smaller response to these failures than you have to successes, I think, because you kind of see them as successes themselves. It's the same with, I think, now our startup, because you mentioned giving out flyers. It's like, okay, so now we know what doesn't work. We can try something else. So yes, I think that can help you with, especially with failures.
That's the right mindset, yeah.
And your emotional response to it.
That's really a growth mindset, and just taking in as much information as you can from the failures and improving from there. And I also liked Nikolay's idea of just moderation, of balance. So you need to celebrate, but you also need to be in control of your emotions. So both things, you need to balance those things out.
I think that like stoicism is the best.
Yeah.
That it's like extremely useful in all of those cases.
But then again, Danny's point on celebrating is massive, I think. Otherwise, stoicism, you can sometimes I feel like you can slip from stoicism just because you're human.
I really
So
like
it's just
the
like
jar
something
idea. I think I'm gonna start doing it because
Yeah.
it's amazing, man. Like, it's a cheat code. you instantly feel better about
Hacks, you
yourself.
hack your brain.
Yeah, exactly. Like imagine if things are not going well and you see this jar which is almost full of awesome stuff that you
Yeah.
achieved. You're like,
Oh, that's a good trick for job interviews, by the way. Just check my success jar. Just check my
no,
success jar.
tell us about yourself.
Honestly, that's
Wait,
amazing.
give me a second.
I just throw notes at a party, you know. Yeah, look at these guys.
This is success, people.
Yeah.
High value success.
Then they're all empty. Just empty.
All right,
Or like
boys.
got out of bed, cooked myself dinner.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Cook today.
Yeah, woke up.
Going back to small wins. Small wins. Anyway, Danny, do you have any more
Yeah,
questions?
I
for
think
them?
it's a good way for us to conclude the episode. I think you've been brilliant, Peter and Nikolay, and it was amazing to have you here to hear your perspective. I think we overlap in a lot of ways in our way of thinking, and I really enjoy those conversations with you. So it's been an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys.
Yeah,
Honestly.
thank you very much for having us, and I'm gonna put this down on my notes and gonna put it in the jar that were brilliant. So thank you very much. That's the first note.
Danny said we're brilliant.
Great, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and make sure
Thank
to
you very
follow
much, guys.
Before the Valley. We're gonna link their channel in the description. They're on Instagram as well. They do a lot of great content, so make sure to check them out. All right, peace.
Yeah, thank you very much.